there are some books that are better than other books, but they don't have the same level of acceptance. And I mean, why the Alfiya of Ibn Malik? There's a lot of grammar books have been written. Imam Suyuti wrote a brilliant summation of Arabic in 1,000 lines, but it's not studied like the Alfiya is. Why is that? Why the Ajurrumiya? Why Riyad al-Salihin? Most of the ulama say there are untold number of 40 hadith collections. Why Imam Nawawi's? So it has that acceptance. It's a very early creed. It's the creed of Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu. It's something everybody claims the creed, like a lot of different groups claim the creed of Imam Tahawi and interpret it in their own ways. But that's why my teacher Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya said that the best thing to do was read it without a commentary. Just study it as it is. Don't try to impose your own understanding on it, because it's very clear. It doesn't need much commentary at that level. You can go into commentary, that's fine, but it doesn't need it. It's a very clear creedal statement.
One of the things that strikes me about this creed is the way Imam Tahawi has seemed to gone out of his way to include as many people as Muslims. I mean, you don't see him pronouncing takfir, if you do this, you are non-Muslim. In fact, he says the reverse. So this is a very, as you mentioned, a very early creed, and I find it amazing, contrasting it from when it was written over 1100 years ago until today.
Well, takfir, which is excommunicating or declaring people non-Muslim or outside of the faith, takfir is something that was considered very, very dangerous early on. The Prophet ﷺ said in a sound hadith that whoever declares another Muslim a kafir, one of them is kafir. In other words, if you're wrong about that, then you're a kafir. In Maharam al-Lisan, which is a book I translated on the prohibitions of the tongue, one of the things that Muhammad al-Hasan says in his commentary, is written by Imam al-Yaqubi from Mauritania. One of the things that he says in the commentary is, if somebody says to you, "Oh, fornicator, ya zani," it's not permitted for you to call him a fornicator. You can say anta kadhab, you're a liar, but you can't say anta zani, bal anta zani. But if he calls you a kafir, you can say you're a kafir. And that's why some of the early Salaf said, "La ukaffiru illa man kaffarani." I do not deem anyone a kafir unless they deem me a kafir. In other words, by calling me a kafir, I'm going to say they're a kafir because of that hadith. One of us is kafir. So to call another person kafir is kufr. And one of the things about the early Muslims, they didn't even call, if you look at how they talked about individual, they wouldn't say to an individual like Abu Sufyan, "Anta kafir." They'd call them Adu Allah, enemy of God. But they didn't know Abu Sufyan. I mean, there's a khilaf in the Ash'ari and the Maturidi Aqida. The Ash'aris say that kufr is a permanent state, that somebody is a kafir eternally with God. The Maturidi say that kufr is a temporary state, and what you die on is what determines your ultimate state. So it's a khilaf. So for instance, for the Ash'aris, Abu Sufyan was a believer even when he was fighting the Prophet. He just didn't know it yet. Whereas in the Maturidi, he was a kafir who became a believer. It's a khilaf amongst these mutakallimun. I mean, that's a point of dissension. But what's interesting about that is the idea, if you look at the Ash'ari position, that is why Imam Al-Qurtubi says that Umar ibn al-Khattab was beloved to God when he was prostrating to idols in Mecca. He was beloved to God because God knew who Umar was. So if you see Umar, you call them something and looking down on them with contempt. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Umar ibn al-Khattab is the caliph of the Messenger of God, because Allah knows his seal. So when you see a person, you don't know their seal. You don't know who they are. They could be a friend of God and you don't even know it. And that's why in Morocco they say, "La tahqir abdan asan yakun lillahi waliya." Don't have contempt for anybody because he could be beloved to God. You just don't know. And so that creates a different way in which you deal with people, because everybody is potentially somebody that can get close to God. And so this idea of, kuffar and a'udhu billah and, Allah yal'anahum, that whole attitude, which unfortunately has become very common among some of the Muslims, especially the younger Muslims. It's not because there's a lot of problems. I mean, I can understand humanly how a lot of these things come about, but humanly and Islamically are two different things. One of the things Imam Nawawi says, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Now, I translate brother there as fellow man, because Imam Shabrakhiti, Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, Imam Nawawi, they say that means your fellow man. And what Imam Nawawi says in his commentary is, it is against your human nature to want for your enemy what you want for yourself. And that's why in Islam you have to rise above your human nature. I mean, that's something Muslims don't want to deal with anymore. But the truth is, that is what Islam is calling you to do, is actually to rise above your desire for vengeance, to rise above your enmity and animosity towards somebody and want good for them in spite of what they're doing to you. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, when he sent a messenger, it's in Sahih Bukhari, when he sent a messenger to Daws, and Daws were the tribe, a Yemeni tribe. He sent a messenger to call them to Islam, and they chastised him and rejected. And so they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, "Inna Dawsan Aba," they've refused Islam. Ad'u alayhim ya Rasulullah. So imprecate against them, make a prayer against them. And so they said, the Prophet turned towards the Qibla. وَظَنَّ النَّاسَ أَنَّهُ سَيَدْعُ عَلَيْهِمْ. And all the people thought he was going to make a prayer against them. And he said, Allahumma ahdi Dawsan wa ati bihim. Oh God, guide Daws and bring them to us. So he didn't, people talk 5 minutes to somebody and then and they say, oh, well, he rejected Islam. The Prophet was calling Abu Sufyan for almost 20 years to Islam. And in the end he accepted it. He fought him on the battlefield. These people aren't fighting us. Most of these people here in these cultures are not